Good morning, everyone. My name's Lorene. Welcome to Books at the Bottom of the Stairs. Today, June 1st, is a little bit chilly, which is too bad, but that means the doors are closed and it should be a bit quieter inside. We're going to talk about Ragged Company by Richard Wagaseme. Richard Wagaseme is a Canadian author and journalist. I should say he passed away at the age of 61. And I'm just going to read from my notes for a minute because he really led such an interesting life, quite a distinguished career, and I don't want to mess everything up. So he wrote a novel in 2012 called Indian Horse, and that won the Burt Award for First Nations, Métis, and Inuit literature. He was from the Wagaseme Independent Nation, which is Northern Ontario, and let's see, he was also a child of the foster system. His parents had been children victims of the residential school system and were unable to parent successfully. So he ended up with his siblings going into the foster home system and was eventually adopted into a family that had less than sympathetic. They just were not interested in the children having any links with their native background. So he was just as effectively disassimilated from his culture as his parents had been. At 16, he left that situation and hit the streets. And he encountered drug abuse and drinking, all manner of street life, street engagement, and he found himself in missions and homeless shelters and sleeping on grates to keep warm, and eventually was able to bring himself out of that through, beautifully, the libraries. He went there first for shelter and then to read, and while he was there, he encountered positive experiences, and it slowly brought him out of that world of homelessness. But it impregnates pretty well everything that he writes about. He is just so in tune with the people of First Nations who are badly scarred, badly served. I mean, just anything that was wicked and evil in the lives of First Nations as a result of colonialization, he is aware of, and he is a stunning storyteller, a stunning poet. So the book that this isn't the first book that I've read of Richard Wagaseme's. I read Indian Horse, and I have Starlight on my to-do list. I'm looking forward to that a great deal. And what was the other one? Medicine Walk. So I knew going into this book that I was going to really enjoy it. He is just such a brilliant writer. And as you encounter each page, not only are you encountering beautiful storytelling skills, you're encountering a lyricism that is so at odds with the struggles and the pain of the people that he's describing. So it's a beautiful experience in a kind of horrible situation. This story is about four main characters. They are homeless. They've come to the streets at different points. Like not everybody arrives in their 20s, but some are. One fellow basically was born on the streets, and they come through various different things that have happened to them, and they've been there a long time. So the four have come together. Their names are One for the Dead, and the reason that this woman has this name is that when you drink, you pour a little onto the ground of wherever you are, and you say One for the Dead. So it's a way of bringing your family and your elders and the spirits into your life. It's a way of blessing them and being blessed. Then there's Digger and Timber and Double Dick. Double Dick has the name Richard, so they called him Double Dick. And these men are really hardened, street-engaged people. And we meet them first when they are going to the movies as a way of avoiding a terrible, terrible cold snap. There's no shelters available for them. So they decide to go to the movies and see if they can wait it out. And they pool all their change together, and one of them's got a little bit of a stash of money, and so off they trot. And they go to a movie and they meet a fifth person, Granite, who is a white privileged male who is a reporter, but also a broken man, also homeless in his own way, driftless in his own way. He's had tragedy and he is in the process of grieving his way through that, rather unsuccessfully. So they five come together in this freezing cold snap, and over time their friendship kind of builds. The five of them, the four remain very much glued together, and Granite starts to be accepted by the group. It takes a while, and they develop trust, and it's primarily around the going to the movies and discussing them afterwards. And so this movie motif goes through the book. It's a different way of telling stories, and it's a different way for people to connect to their emotional world and find a way of expressing themselves. But it's also just sometimes a lot of fun. Just, some movies are there for a giggle, and they giggle. So it's really diverse as to what they are seeing. And along the way, they come across a lottery ticket. And this lottery ticket turns out to be a winning lottery ticket, but not just for $25, it's for $13 million. And so these four vagabonds have no way of claiming this. They don't have identification, they don't have an address, they don't even know how to really get to the lottery offices. So they call upon Granite, who has friends and resources. And so these four are united with all this money. They have to navigate their way through the media, and they have to navigate their way through becoming unhomeless. So they're on a new journey. They're on a new concrete, as it were. The concrete that they traveled mostly was down in the inner city, and they're now traveling the concrete sidewalks of the privileged and learning what it means to take their family unit and move it to a different location, and yet not become untrue to themselves and untrue to the survival skills that they've developed. So Granite helps them navigate that, and there are a couple of other characters that come into the story at this point. And what we see now is an opportunity for healing, not so much because they're rich, but I think because they have an opportunity to contemplate. All of a sudden, it isn't about survival for just survival, food, water, shelter. It's more of an emotional survival, more of a healing of the horrible wounds that got them into their bad places in the first place. So we see different kinds of journey happening. We see different kinds of storytelling happening, and every chapter is a different learning opportunity for the reader as well as for the character. So what happens is each chapter can be anywhere from 2 pages long to about 6 pages long, and each character tells the story. Sometimes there's a little bit overlap of when something happens. For instance, going to get the money, you'll get the story from 4 different points of view plus Granite's. Other times it will just be someone describing the ordering out of Chinese food, and no one else will comment on it. So you have different kinds of overlapping and not connecting. I think what this book is ultimately about, and I had to write this down because I didn't want to, just blather. It's about the life and dying on the street. It's about compassion, family alternatives. It's mainly about storytelling, tolerance, and it's especially about survival. And eventually, as we come towards the end of the story, it is also about healing and home. And there's much discussion as to what comprises home. So for one of the characters, home is more of a mental state of being, and he struggles very much with the physicalness of their new environment. For another character, home has to do with the people that they encounter and the connection that they maintain with people who need caring for. So each of their endings is quite different. They come to their not everybody resolves, so I'm not really giving everything away, but for those that do resolve, they each have a different method of achieving that. And for those who don't resolve, they also have different reasons why their wounds are just, not going to really heal over. And I think that's an interesting point for those of us who haven't had that kind of a gritty life, is that sometimes the things we encounter are never really going to heal over, but that doesn't mean that there aren't things to learn from them. So I guess my takeaway from this book is that at first I was reading it for the story and just enjoying the characters, and as I got further and further into it, I realized I was on a spiritual journey as well, in the sense that almost each character had something really profound to communicate to themselves, and as the reader, I also got to share in that journey. One of the characters is illiterate, significantly illiterate, and I think in the way he's the largest philosopher of the group. He sees things, because of his naivety and his illiteracy, he sees them from a different light, and he comes at words and storytelling from a different direction than people who've been able to do something as simple as reading the newspaper. For him, that's a miracle. So there are different ways of giving and receiving story. I thought this was just a stunning book. Of the three that I have read, I have adored this one the most. It's a 5 out of 5 stars for me. I do volunteer work with a homeless shelter in the winter, and I've always enjoyed the stories that I learn there, the people that I get to know. And one of the things that this shelter is it's a no barrier shelter. That means people can come in at any level of intoxication, and if they are, overly intoxicated for whatever the substance is, we will do a wellness call for them to go to the emergency. So I guess safety first is one of the first things that we look after, because people who are inebriated can't necessarily feel the cold and don't necessarily know that they're bleeding or so on. So I got to know a lot of people through that process, where what you have to do is accept the people for who they are and not for how they're presenting externally. That so I've seen a lot of really not nice things, and yet I have some really nice friends in the homeless community, and we chat on the streets when the weather's well, and we're just saying, how are you doing? So this has also brought forward to me how important it is to connect with people, to not let a person's appearance be a barrier to kindness and friendship, and just general, comedy's not the right word. I can't think what the right word would be, but just joy. I think joy would be the word, to not let joy be lost because someone looks unapproachable. So those are my story for you today. I hope you pick up Richard Wagaseme's. I think pretty much everything he's written is stellar. He has poetry and children's books and a couple of memoirs. I don't think you can be disappointed by anything that he's written. I hope that your reading dreams and adventures continue to come true, and I'll see you again. Bye-bye.